listening to the Ice Prep Podcast. Here's your hosts, Brian and Pat.
And welcome to what's a gorgeous day, finally. Though unlike last time when we recorded this and then Pat left for Vegas the very next day and all the snow decided to come towards London. That was fun, which Pat ignored all of it by being in the nice desert weather. We're not jealous at all, Pat.
Woo! It was great. It was 29, 32, and 32. Couldn't ask for better weather.
Yeah, and meanwhile here, the entire time you guys were gone, it was just cold, snowy, miserable, and wet.
Yeah, I mean, did I feel guilty? No, not one bit. I mean,
shouldn't.
I shamelessly posted a picture of me by a pool while it was sunny with a drink while I knew it was snowing here. And even pointed out I heard it snowed in London today. You know what? If that makes me a dick, well, here we are.
So that's in the golden age of social media, even though I hate social media, that's like the best way to do it. Just like everybody back home is having a terrible time because of the weather. Look at my view.
Yeah,
Don't you hate me?
You know, it's not very often I get to do a humble brag or even a brag in general. So I'm going to take that moment and I'm going to relish it. So,
and we will spend a fair amount of time talking about Pat in Vegas. And a lot of that has to do, you were at the game that may have just tanked the entire Vegas model, and who knows, like, this team will not look the same next year if they don't make the playoffs and go on a run. You were at that Monday night game where the Devils took down Vegas, and that was kind of what seems to be the most recent start of Peter DeBoer just hating Robin Lehner.
I don't think he's been a fan of Robin Lehner for a while, just by the way that he's spoken about his injuries and about his recovery and just speaking about him in general. There's always been a sort of sense that he didn't really feel that he fit the team. I don't know why, but like every time I heard any interview speaking about Lehner, it felt like there was just like distrust in him as the starting goalie, and that's really.
Well, I think a lot of that, though. A lot of that, too, you have to think back. Flowers, the big guy that they draft, he comes out in Vegas when they do the expansion draft in person. It was, him, Shea Theodore, and somebody else, I believe. I can't remember. That came out with the jerseys on. Mm-hmm. He was the face of the franchise. Then they trade to bring in this other goalie from Chicago who had an unreal season with the Islanders, then plays very well for Chicago. Then this trade happens, and he was not looked fondly upon by even fans at that point. So I think, and strangely enough, DeBoer wasn't the coach at that point. He was still the coach in San Jose. Pretty sure he was the coach there when, or I might have my seasons a little mixed up. I think
you're right with the 5-minute major that cost them the entire series.
And I'm pretty sure DeBoer was the coach of the Sharks in that one.
Yes.
So it's one of those weird, like, does he have that mentality still of like, I've seen this goalie give up what should have been an easy lead. The team traded away the reigning Vezina for not, like, you can't even say nothing. Like, they literally traded him away for nothing because the player that they got back isn't even anywhere near the NHL now.
Mm-hmm.
They went through, I don't know how many goalies their first season because of injuries and not being able to figure things out. It's like, I don't know what it is with Vegas and goalies, but talk about one position where you can't be messing around with players like this.
No, and especially like the goaltending is the only position on the entire team where in theory the goalie plays, that one player plays the entire game. No other player is on the ice the whole time. That just doesn't happen. We know that it doesn't. So the only one that in theory does, as long as they don't get shelled, is the goalie. And That is also now completely untrue thanks to Pete DeBoer, what he did. What was the game? Who are they playing again? I completely spaced on who are they playing that game.
So last night they were playing the Caps, and they somehow pulled the win out in OT in that game, and Ovechkin gets his 50th goal, ties Gretzky for the most 50-goal seasons.
And
Bossy, which that's one of those records that I don't think anybody saw ever being matched after Bossy did it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Leonard lets in 1 goal
on 13 shots.
That's okay. That's gonna happen. Like, how many times this year have we literally seen teams like the Avs or teams like Florida where it'll be like 3 shots into the game, they already have 2 goals, and then things start to settle off. We've seen that, like, every single team this year has had a few games where it's like
the
1 shot, 1 goal, and then it teeters off, and the goalie gets going. He gets pulled.
Yeah.
Like, is Patrick Waugh suddenly pulling the strings on Pete DeBoer? Like, are we going to start seeing them pulling the goalie with, like, 7 minutes left in the third period if they're down?
But it's just... So the reason why this is also baffling, so going back to the New Jersey game that they played on Monday, New Jersey beat them 3-2 at home, and Leonard was in net the entire time. Then everyone was not really too sure who was going to be in net when it came to them playing Washington. It comes out that Leonard is first off the ice. That means that he is going to be in net. They asked DeBoer, and he said, and I quote, "Because we pay him to play these games." Meaning he is the starter. Cool. That makes sense. And then suddenly they pull him?
What? So DeBoer has no faith in his starting goaltender.
What?
And this isn't the first coach we've seen this year literally throw their goalie under the bus. We saw it in Edmonton as well. Mm-hmm. And mind you, they kind of have figured things out there. It's just because they're outscoring their problems right now, which does not work when you get to the playoffs, because if you're not getting goaltending, you're not going to move on. The reason why, to me, this is the craziest, most interesting story, all of this going on, we know Robin Lehner's struggle with mental health. You think this is good for him? He has a modified no-trade clause. He is going to demand to be traded, or he is going to get traded in the offseason, without question. Yeah. Like, no doubt in my mind that it's going to be back-to-back years where Vegas is just deciding to get rid of their number 1 goaltender.
Yeah, like, who in their right mind would sit through this? Who would, the season is on the line. It's not that a game is on the line. The season is currently on the line for Vegas, and your coach doesn't have faith in you to finish the game and win the game for you when you're trying to come back from an injury. You're supposed to be the number 1. That eats at every ounce of your confidence. So what happens then? Let's say they're able to squeak in. They are able to make it into the playoffs. At this point, statistically, that is a huge hill to climb. But let's say that happens. Who's the starter then? Do you really, do you think
there's
Leonard's
no way DeBoer would be forced to start Leonard in game 1. Leonard would lose game 1. It would be the exact same thing in the what Vegas did to, was it Leonard against Colorado in the playoffs last year? They basically put him in as fodder to the Wolves.
Yep.
Because Marc-Andre Fleury in the first round, they were like, we need to give him a break. They literally threw Leonard to the Wolves. So was it 8 goals?
Yeah.
That first game?
Something like that. Yeah.
And then he was like, no, can't trust this guy. So it's not like this is anything new. He literally pulled the same move on him last year in the playoffs, except he decided to not pull him. So there's definitely something else going on there between DeBoer and Leonard. There's zero. I honestly think there's a 0 chance Leonard is wearing a Golden Knights jersey at the start of next season.
I hope for his
You and I
mental
talked
health.
about, you and I talked about this before. Obviously, I'm biased being a New Jersey Devils fan. We need a goalie. It is a fun, up-and-coming young team. He's one of those weird personalities that the Devils themselves and the fans would embrace immediately. Mm-hmm. And there's only a handful of teams that just can straight up take a $5 million cap hit on a goalie and not be crunched having to get rid of other players because of it. And Vegas will do it because they need the cap space anyway.
Yeah, and I have a feeling they'd be willing to take like a low-level prospect as the trade if it was like, oh, you got to do something. You can't do a bag of pucks again because it'll look bad. But like the GM clearly doesn't care about aesthetics because he's just going to do whatever he feels like. I don't even know his name, but I don't even want to say his name because the way he treats players, it's literally they are a number. That's it.
I thought so. I just wanted to make sure. Kelly McCrimmon.
Right, McCrimmon. I've heard that name far too much.
Yeah, so it's like the off season. I don't like looking forward to it this much when there's still the playoffs. Obviously, in less than a month time, there's the draft lottery to find out the position of the teams. I have the feeling by the time the draft hits, if not during the draft, Leonard is traded away.
Yeah.
If they don't make the playoffs, does it happen before? If they do make the playoffs and they get knocked out, like, I don't think Vegas isn't going to wait because they're going to, like, we've seen it in the past. They don't care.
Nope.
They love players when they show up. To go out the door, they're basically like, they go full Florida and not even going to, like, give them a taxi to the airport.
Yeah, like, he's going to find out via Twitter, which he doesn't have anymore. Like, that's...
Oh, like Marc-Andre Fleury did from his agent.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. I think that Vegas is in trouble, and the model that they've been trying to develop, I guess? I don't know. Like, because this is a very weird model to try and build your team around. It's not working. It's not going to work. You can't have a team of superstars, especially the way that I look at it too is they are stacking this team with players that were like maybe not like they're like 1 year outside of their peak. Not all of them, but a bunch of them. And they're going to decline. And I feel like that they're like, "Oh, he was so good last year. Let's bring him on. He was so good. He was. I'm not saying that they're bad, but they're expecting this entire team of superstars. They have a team of captains. Like, you can list
their first line is literally captains from other teams in the league.
Yeah. So like they've got this stacked team of names. But it's because they were fantastically amazing, and some of them are starting to decline. I look at Pacioretty, for example. I saw him on the ice, and I could barely see him on the ice. Like
when Vegas came into the league, they were the island of misfit toys, and it worked because it was players that weren't given a chance on their other team that were able to stand out. Within a year or two, they basically became like the evil empire. Mm-hmm. Like this, everybody was afraid of what they had become, but they leveraged everything to get to where they are. And I think everybody expected, okay, maybe by the 23-24 season or 24-25 season, this is all going to come back to bite them. It came back a lot sooner than expected, and one of the biggest parts in that was that Pacioretty trade. If they didn't go for the immediacy of getting Pacioretty and instead kept Nick Suzuki, that is one of those pieces that they would be in such a better position even if they had slotted him in like at that time. Mm-hmm. So they kicked the can down the road, except the can's coming back real quick, and everybody thought they had a much bigger window off the start. So who knows, maybe the Vegas model of coming in swinging compared to the Seattle model of it's not going to be the best first season. Look at all these picks and players that we got at the trade deadline. This could be in 2 or 3 years. Vegas is a bottom feeder and Seattle is looking like a monster out west.
Yeah.
Because Vegas they leveraged everything and they're screwed.
Yeah, they've traded away so many of their picks, so many of their prospects, everything like that. So
For nothing.
So they've got maybe 2-3 years in the tank of some of these players. Like, I'm not saying that they're going to be washed up or anything. Like, you look at Mark Stone, he's a fantastic player, but he can only be fantastic forever. He's not Joe Pavelski. And, like, because somehow he found another gear there, but...
You can think back, like, they literally gave away a first pairing defenseman in Nate Schmidt for nothing.
Yep.
Because they decided that they wanted somebody else. Like, if you're in Vegas, you know you're not safe because they'll see that new shiny toy and they're like, we want it. You're gone.
Yeah.
So
the one thing that will continue, though, I have a feeling, at least for the next few years, is what it's like seeing a game in Vegas. And this is a sort of...
yeah, well...
Because we could keep
It's still
going,
Vegas, but we're going to go from, holy crap, the on-ice product, they're in trouble. It's going to get bad, though it is Vegas, and we know their GM is basically, I want to win at all times now. That could be a blow-up, and they fix everything. We just don't know.
That's true, because they can trade away for picks and undo the mess that they've done. Like, they could trade away Leonard and be like, well, we can find a goalie somewhere. And there you go. It could just be one trade, and that's all they need to do. Who knows? Because hockey is voodoo, and same with the players. But I do want to talk about the experience at the Vegas game, because I think it's important that people know how incredible it is to see a game in Las Vegas, which I never thought I would say those words out loud.
Until they came into the league, yeah, because it was... I remember watching their first game. I stayed up to watch it, and you could see just from the production value that they put in that they basically went, you're in Vegas, it's a Vegas show. You're not just getting a hockey game. You're getting, like, there's a downtime at a normal hockey game. You run to go pee, get a beer, get whatever, because you know there's nothing going on. Maybe there's Timbits hockey on the ice, but that's only for like 5 minutes. Yeah,
and... you know, my experience with hockey in the desert was Arizona, so the bar was low, and they took a rocket over that bar. It was unbelievable, and I didn't even experience all of it. Like, there's a parade before the game starts. I was eating dinner at that point, but going in... everyone was really friendly and welcoming. There was DJ just blasting this music. There was like a pre-party in the street, everything like that. I missed the parade, like I mentioned, but they have like drummers and the cheerleaders and all the mascots, because they have two just running around and getting people really excited. The whole city, there are flags down the street saying Vegas born. You've got so many. I saw at least 200 license plates that were personalized license plates that were the Vegas logo. I saw so much support for this team that's so young in that city. It was awesome. Then the game itself, like you mentioned, Timbits hockey in the break in between. Yeah, they had all the sound effects. They made it sound like an actual hockey game. They had an announcer announcing it in a way that, like, the crowd was cheering when they scored a goal. They had the blast of the steam come up. They had the goal horn going. It was great. These kids, you could tell, were having the time of their life. They made it fun versus, like, we're just going to do this for the people that don't need to get up and go to the bathroom. And I felt like I was missing stuff when I had to get up and get a drink or whatever. Like, I was worried I was going to miss out on things, which is incredible. Because normally, like, you'd get up and leave and go to the washroom in between because it's like, well, whatever, who cares?
Yeah, you know that there's, like, here are the times. It's like in baseball. It's like early innings, nothing's going on. Okay, I've got time to go run and get something to drink or something to eat.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas this time, like, I was like running to go to the bathroom, getting a drink, and then trying to get back to my seat as fast as I could. In between every single stoppage of play, the DJ had custom mixes. They had things on the Jumbotron that were using pop culture references to really, like, you see it all the time in games, but the way that they produced it, the way that they pushed it forward was top tier. They had this, is it the flight deck? I can't remember, but, like, you've got right at the top, the drummers with the LED glasses on. You've got all these promotions that are going on. The amount of times that they started a Go Knights Go chant, and the whole crowd was so into it. The passion, the joy from the crowd.
And you can hear that on the broadcast too, because I was obviously watching the Devils broadcast, and there were a lot of times where they couldn't talk because it was like, okay, well, the fans are getting rowdy, and they know, like, we can't compete with it because the press box is, like, almost right in the stands.
Yeah, and, like, I've been to a Maple Leafs game and I've been to a Buffalo Sabres game, but it was both of them were against Colorado because, you know, if I'm going to go and spend like $500 on one ticket in the nosebleeds for their Toronto game, it should at least be against the team that I enjoy seeing. And it was nothing even close, the vibe. And it was like it's ruined live hockey for me, because nothing will ever compete with this. I've been to the local team London Knights here, and pretty familiar going Go Knights Go there as well. Obviously, it's a lot smaller, but you could just feel from the fans in the stadium that they were fans. They were fans of their team. They loved that team. They were passionate about that team. And you could feel it with every single Go Knights Go that came out. You could hear it in the way that they reacted to the sounds and the gameplay. And that, like, every single time there was a shot, people were standing up and cheering. They were so hopeful every single play. And you go to a Leafs game, and the whole time, the vibe feels I love this team and I hate this team at this exact same time. There's this doubt, there's this fear, there's this resentment to the team is what it...
Constant blue balling.
Exactly. There's I think there was 2 or 3 Go Leafs Go cheers. When Vegas was down 3-1, that's when the Go Knights Go cheers were happening nonstop. The crowd was in it. Every shot. They were standing up. They were so pumped and so hopeful. Whereas when I went to the Leafs game and they were playing Colorado, when they were down, I think it was 3-2 at the time, the stadium was silent. I could have dropped my beer and you would have heard it on the broadcast. I would have been screaming because it was $92 for a beer. But it's so drastically different. And I know I've already rambled so much about it, but I will just say, I'll wrap it up with this. If for any reason you're going, maybe I should go to Las Vegas for a trip, try and do so during hockey season. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, that's probably something already in your mind, and go to one of these games. You will not regret it. It wasn't a hockey game. It was an experience, and it was one that I wish that I could do daily. I felt amazing afterwards, and I had no stake in that game. I didn't care who won. I really didn't. I just wanted to see a hockey game. And I was so elated afterwards. It was amazing.
And that's one thing that just from moment one, the first time the puck dropped, that's been the whole thing. You look online, and even hearing it from you, is that it's not just the hockey game that you're going to. It's the entire experience. It's the cheerleaders and the drummers in the stands in between play or in intermission. And they very, very much target, if you're a Canadian going down to Vegas, you're going to get targeted to try and get to some of these games, even though they're often oversold.
I will tell you, during the game, they did this thing and it said, cheer if you are. And on the screen, it was just if you're a brunette, if you're a blonde, sorry, redheads, all the ladies, all the guys. And then they said, you're a tourist. And the crowd cheered. You're a local. And the place erupted. It was the loudest cheer of the night. And that, to me, speaks volumes that they were so worried about bringing a Vegas team. Oh, no one's going to go. They're not going to be able to do it. No. Vegas is it'll only be tourists. They're not going to sell out. We were at 104% capacity that game, according to, I think it's called NHL Stats, is a Twitter account I follow. And I want to say 75% of the crowd were locals. The team passion runs deep there, at least for the next little while until they really do get burnt. It's amazing.
That's hearing all of that, and with what we were talking about before you went into your Vegas experience, is exactly why they will do everything in their power, including playing or trading away star players. They don't care, to get to the playoffs.
Yep.
Because they know that Vegas during the regular season, there's nothing like it. Vegas during the playoffs, no other team will ever come close to what I can imagine that experience is like. Just from watching on TV and seeing everything on social, there's a reason why their owner is basically I don't care what you have to do to get us into the playoffs, to get us to win, to get us Jack Eichel, to get us Pietrangelo. You trade away Marc-Andre Fleury just because, so as much as we want to say, yeah, Vegas is in trouble, they'll find a way because their owner is going to force them to.
And then one last piece about what you were saying about Vegas in the playoffs. They have to make it to the playoffs because do you know when peak season for Las Vegas travelers are? Playoff season.
Right into May.
It literally, that's when it, like April, May, June. That is the time you want to go. Maybe a little bit earlier too, but like that's when prices and everything goes up. That's when tourism at its peak in Vegas. So of course they want to make the playoffs because they want all of that money and then some.
Well, even just look at the experience as a TV viewer for the All-Star game this year for the skills competition. That actually looked like they were having fun.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that in I don't know how long, minus the like botched judging that happened with the breakaway challenge. But it's everybody you see online when the Devils won that game, it was like 31 other teams in the league were like, this is the best thing that could have happened. Vegas not making it to the playoffs, where it's one of those situations where for hockey, they're one of those teams like the Leafs, like the Rangers, that if they're in the playoffs, it's a good thing.
Yep.
No, nothing against LA because they're also one of those teams that, well, they're one of the biggest markets in North America. LA making it into the playoffs or Vegas making it into the playoffs, you're going to get a bigger draw with Vegas.
Yep.
Not even in person, like even just people watching on television.
Because they know that there's superstars on the ice and it should be good hockey. So
yeah. Can we go from that into the West quickly?
Yeah.
So I know we talked about it. We talked about it last week. So the East is 100% locked up at that when we did this last week. It was locked up, but it wasn't officially locked in. The Metro, who knows? Washington and Pittsburgh are tied, so that's the third and the second wild card. Carolina and New York are tied. That's for first in the Metro. Obviously, Florida, I think if they win, they only need one more point, and they get they clinch top spot in the East. Mm-hmm. They win the Atlantic. Toronto needs 1 point, and they're guaranteed second in the Atlantic. They still don't know if they're going to play Tampa or Boston, which, good luck, Leaf fans.
Flip a coin.
Florida has decided that the Avs, okay, so you're not going to win every humanly possible game. Well, now we've got as many points as you with one less game played. So the Avs, who were the runaway President's Trophy winners, that may not happen anymore.
Yeah, they went 8-2-0, Colorado did, and that wasn't good enough to hold that lead because Florida went 10-0-0 in their last 10. So it's, yeah, and I mean, that's not the trophy that Colorado's shooting for. And that's not to say they're not like, and I know first place usually wins more Stanley Cups. I get that.
Did you see that post earlier on in the week? Somebody did the math on it.
I think it was producer Drew.
It averages out to about 1 in every 4 years. The team that wins since like 2004, 2005 or something like that, the team that wins the President's Trophy ends up winning the cup. Mm-hmm. And it's a ridiculous amount. It's like either 40 to 50%, either the first or second overall like team in either the East or the West ends up winning it. So there is correlation between regular season and the playoffs, but looking at the Western right now, only 4 of 8 teams have locked a spot. That with some teams only having 4 games left, I love that because that is pure chaos. Of course, Vancouver gets the overtime loss the other night. They were in a situation where they could win every single game, and they were in no matter what. Now they are reliant on winning out. Mm-hmm. LA, Vegas, potentially Dallas and Nashville not winning more as well. Vegas is in the exact same boat. LA has the easiest schedule remaining. They have 4 games, so it's anyone's game. And honestly, whoever ends up third in the Pacific, I think they lose immediately anyway, but that's just me. I stand by what I said last week. I don't think a team fighting for a playoff spot right now can beat the Oilers in 4 of 7.
Yeah, I mean, the Oilers are doing what they do every year, and that's they turn on the Jets right at the end, and I think it's going to bite them yet again.
But it's Mike Smith this time, he's getting playoff ready early.
But you don't want him ready now. You want him ready in the playoffs. That's the issue, because in the playoffs he has a time limit, and he runs out, as we've seen with Calgary. He got dummied by Colorado, but I don't know. I can't see that goaltending tandem being anywhere near good enough to take them past even the second round.
No, they won't make it out of the second round. It's Calgary's to lose essentially until the Western Conference Final. That first line alone, the statistics that they have on 5-on-5, we haven't seen anything like that since like the 80s.
Yeah, and that's the thing that everyone keeps going back to is it doesn't really matter about power play. It matters about 5-on-5. And yeah, as much as I don't want Calgary to be that good, I really don't, because
they are literally the best.
Yeah, they are absolutely fantastic. It's been tough this season as well because Colorado's top line, for instance, they've been rotating with injuries. There is no solid top line because there's always somebody from the second line or even third line as a replacement because of whoever's out. It's a miracle that they've been putting up these numbers, but it just goes to show their depth since they've been injured
and it's
all season.
And they're one of those teams, Colorado, same with Florida. You look at the stats, normally the President's Trophy does not matter. I think this year it is so key because if you do end up with a final between Florida and Colorado, between those two teams is a combined 11 regulation home losses. There is 63 combined regulation or wins at home. That is one of the dumbest stats I have ever heard. Obviously, the Avs have lost 3 in OT. Florida has lost 0 in overtime at home. So as much as it's normally the top teams can take their foot off the gas, they're not able to. The only team to me that can kind of sit on their laurels because they're fine with their spot is the Leafs.
Yeah.
They're essentially locked into second. They're not going to catch Florida. Their opponent doesn't matter. They've pretty much locked in home ice. Carolina and New York are fighting for we don't want to play Tampa or Boston, so they're basically trying to constantly give the other person first overall in the Metro. Washington has decided that it wants to catch up to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh doesn't want to be in the playoffs. They're 3-6-1 in their last 10.
It's just this cup and ball movement that's happening right now. But as much as I would love to see Colorado win the Presidents, they won't. They've got too many people that are still recovering and need that break. And one of the most important players on the team is currently resting and is going to rest potentially up until the playoffs begin, and that is Devon Taves. As seen at the start of the season, he actually didn't start at the start of the season. For the first 7 games, he wasn't there, I believe. And they didn't do so well in those 7 games. I believe they won 1. And then he came back, and then they didn't stop winning.
Well, I remember the start of the Avs season. You were in full-on panic mode. What is Sakic doing? You were just missing one of the best defensive defensemen in the league who also is putting up a point per game for some time.
And then it comes back to my argument. If you rely that heavily on one defenseman, you don't deserve to be in the playoffs, Toronto, with Jake Muzzin. If one player...
Florida with Aaron Ekblad, Tampa with Victor Hedman, but mind you, they've also got Sergachev behind it. There's a lot of teams that are literally banking on one defenseman not getting injured.
I hate that.
And it shows. But that's defensemen are... There's a reason why so many got paid a ridiculous amount. Mind you, a lot of them didn't deserve it.
I know.
It's the old argument. Defense wins championships in the playoffs. I don't care if a forward puts up 100 points in 20-odd games. If you know that the 2 stars on that team are the goalie and the number 1 defenseman.
I know, and I get that, and I understand it's important to have that, but boy, do I hate that. I hate it so much that
But you can't judge the first 10 games of a season. Otherwise, Buffalo and Detroit would both be in the playoffs right now. They started hot.
I know, but the one game that Taves has missed since then, the one that they played against Seattle, they lost to Seattle.
You're not going to win every game.
I know.
Hell, the Devils have chased Shesterkin this year. They chased Markstrom. So, things happen to top teams. You're not going to win every game. I get that you have 55 wins and you're greedy and you want that to be 60. You're not going to win every game. And especially in the last 10, if you already have a playoff spot locked in, with the injuries, you're looking at Bednar and he's going, what changes can I potentially do? Because we're going to get players injured in the playoffs that in, say, for the latter half of a second and third period, I can switch because Makar goes down or Taves goes down or so and so on. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't.
You're arguing a different point than me. I'm saying I don't like the idea that the team's success potentially rests on one player's shoulders.
That's pretty much every team, though.
Not always. You look at Tampa last year, and they had that line that was a shutdown line. They didn't have Kucherov, who wasn't playing his best at the start of when he came back.
If the best player on the ice wasn't Vasilevsky, they weren't making it out of the first round, or the second round, or the third round.
And Sergachev and everything like that. And I mean, obviously goalies are important, but I'm talking more about the 5, not the 6, because the goalies, obviously, that's a different argument right there. But if you look at the Leafs' chances, as soon as they lost Muzzin, the first thing you said was they're done, and then they were, and that's not good. That they've done the right thing. And the
Leafs learned from that, though.
Exactly.
If you watch the Leafs, they that was one of the biggest adaptions that I saw from the playoffs to the regular season, and honestly, the addition of Giordano and Colin Blackwell might be the best trade that was made the entirety of the trade deadline for any team.
Yeah. No, and that's what I'm saying is that they looked at it and said, okay, well, Muzzin, whether or not he's actually potentially an issue, like I was mentioning a couple episodes back.
We've mentioned that a lot.
Yeah, so say he was still the Jake Muzzin that everybody knows and loves, and he goes out. They went out and got the insurance to make sure that if he does go out, it doesn't matter. We have the depth. Whereas Colorado right now, I know it sounds ridiculous with players like Byram and who's that other kid that plays? Oh, Makar. Well, you have this talent, but it's all a specific type of talent, and it's all offensive talent. And that's what worries me is that their main defensive talent, they don't have anybody below them that if Taves does get injured, and he's clearly playing with a nagging injury, if they're sitting him, then that means he could.
I mean, it could be a situation like Matthews where he's sitting again, third game in a row, and it's one of those things where it could literally be just like he's got a hangnail, and they're like, "You're not gonna play." It could, we just don't know. Hockey is hockey, in that they don't say what injuries are. For all we know, he could be having some nagging stomach issues from COVID. We have no way of knowing. Colorado is in one of those positions. The trades that were done by Sakic at the deadline and what is built up there, as you said, you lose a first-line player, you have second and third liners that are more than capable of moving up to help. There is not a lot of teams that are in playoff spots that can do that. Pittsburgh is one just because Sidney Crosby can turn any player in the league into a superstar. But if you look at a team like Minnesota, if Kirill Kaprizov goes down, St. Louis is going to eat them alive. Mind you, St. Louis is going to eat them alive anyway.
Yeah,
without question. But the Blues could literally get their entire first line down. That team is built in such a way that doesn't matter. The Avs have the exact same thing. Yeah, they may not have the backup defensive defenseman, but that's when players like Kadri will play further back on defense. You see the same thing in the Leafs. If you've got Marner on the ice and Riley plays forward, watch right away. 16 will immediately go back to where he was. Marner plays more defense than offense some nights. And you'll see that you're going to see that shift with the Avs too. If somebody like Taves goes down, you're going to see some of those players that have that high hockey IQ, watch them shift back.
I will say, so you brought up something, though, that I really want to touch on, and that was when you said that Matthews is out. He might have a hangnail. Now, if we're going to talk about the Hart Trophy, and Matthews has been out with all of the games that Matthews has been out, they clearly don't need him to win the game.
No, all they needed was Giordano.
But shouldn't the Hart be the person that's most valuable to the team? And isn't it, to me, if I watch that ice, that's Marner's ice. Marner.
If we want to go with that argument, the player that deserves that out of any in the league right now has zero Hart talk. We've talked about his team, Johnny Gaudreau.
Oh, yeah, no. Johnny Gaudreau is being criminally underrated.
The
That's
season
disgusting.
that Taylor Hall had that won him the Hart is like nothing in comparison to what Johnny Gaudreau is doing this year.
Yep.
Mind you, that if a first line or if a line in hockey could get an award, that one should go down in history as one of the best lines that we have ever seen that nobody talks about. And that's what Calgary wants, though.
Yes.
That's what, you know how we've talked about Sutter quotes all the time?
Deflecting,
he never
deflecting.
compliments his players. It's always the Avalanche are the boogeyman. Oh, I don't want to play Vegas if they make it into the playoffs. They're scary. They've got over $100 million. He is constantly, he did the same thing with LA. He always makes his team seem like the underdog. He pushes them with the underdog narrative to the media. If I had a vote, obviously you can't just go with recency bias, and Gaudreau's been really good lately, but you can't have a over 100-point season and have a bad season. If that makes sense. That's a terrible argument. He's been so solid. If I have to pick between Connor McDavid and Johnny Gaudreau, I'm picking Johnny Gaudreau right now.
Because he's been consistently important to his team.
McDavid is so reliant on the power play for a lot of his points.
Well, the other
Gaudreau is putting up record-breaking 5-on-5 points.
Okay, so the one thing I will say, though, is remember when McDavid and Draisaitl, the two of them, this season, it happened where they hit that valley. The normal valley that most players hit. What happened to the Edmonton Oilers when that valley hit?
They went from first in the Pacific to, I believe, like 7th at one point.
Okay, so
they also were getting goaltending that would rival the New Jersey Devils.
But the other thing I'm going to point out is, does that not kind of point to him being beyond valuable to his team?
It's one of those things that it's such a stupid argument to argue that Connor McDavid doesn't deserve the Hart literally any year that he plays a full season, because I know you think, and I agree at times, that he's so boring just because of what he does is so freaking good. Mm-hmm. But if he's not the favorite, I know Leaf fans they're all hurrah, hurrah on Matthews getting it, and there is a valid argument for that.
Totally.
If he can get to that, if he does not hit 60 and he does not break 100 points, I don't think he stands a chance in the voting. Those magic round numbers, they do something crazy to voters.
Well, and the other thing that is important, so you've got McDavid, who's clearly playing out of his mind. You've got Draisaitl, who's equally playing out of his mind. You've got Huberdeau that's doing things that has never been done in Florida. You've got Johnny Gaudreau having a season that he most likely will never have again, but who knows? Again, hockey is voodoo.
Well, unless he has that same line mates, no, he'll go back to being an 80-point player.
Exactly. The one thing, though, is obviously the different changing gears, and that is Igor Shesterkin. Because it's really hard to do you're comparing apples and oranges, but they're still fruit. So as much as they are different, they're still at least part of that same realm. And I did a quick look up because I read something earlier this week, and it was the highest save percentage in a season ever. And somebody said that he was in the top 5 ever highest save percentage. And I was like, that doesn't seem right. So I looked it up, and he wasn't in the top 5 ever. But it's because of some seasons the players got 24 and 38 games and 37 games and 33 games.
Have to adjust for the amount of games. And it's like we are seeing not only forwards and defensemen putting on seasons that have never been seen. We are seeing Dominic Hasek play And there's so much else going on that people are forgetting about it. And his name is dropping out of the Vezina. Are you crazy?
So
he had a bad 3-game stretch, and everybody's like, well, he can't win the Vezina now. It's like, no. He is literally dragging that Rangers team to potentially winning the Metro. He is willing it by himself.
And here's the thing that I find interesting when you do the comparison stats here. So so he's currently in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th place overall when it comes to save percentage throughout a season. However, 1, 2, 3, 4 of those 8 had less than 40 games played. And that is the bar that I think is important. So Igor is sitting at 51 games played. Then above him, you've got Dominic, and he has a 936. That is his current save percentage. 936. That's insane. Dominic Hasek was above it with 936, which is insane. Yeah. And he had 64 games. Tim Thomas, 938. And then from there, Jacques Plante of 943, which is more of a 944, and that's also insane. But when you compare those to what Igor is doing right now, and then you look at the hardware that they got, Jacques Plante, he came 5th place in Hart votes. Then you've got Tim Thomas, he placed 5th place, but he also won the Conn Smythe and the Vezina that year. Hasek, he came 3rd place, and he won the Vezina that year. And obviously none of them won the Hart, but then we go back to Carey Price in his 14-15 season when he did win the Hart. He's actually got a lower save percentage. He's sitting at a 933 versus Igor's 936, and he won the Hart, the Jennings, the Pearson, and the Vezina that year. So anybody that wants to argue that Igor is not at that same tier is wrong. Yes, he may not have played the same amount of games. He's currently sitting at 51, and I don't think, mathematically he can hit what Carey did of 66, but that doesn't matter.
No.
He still played.
Goalies don't play that many games anymore.
Majority.
It's this. No. This is the same.
There's a reason why Price hasn't been playing this season, because he played 66 games this season, and he's dying.
So there's actually something that I can see on the screen right now that's a great example of what we are seeing, and that involves the Toronto Blue Jays. The Toronto Blue Jays had a literal MVP on their team last year who did not win the MVP trophy because we saw something that has never happened ever in the history of baseball in Shohei Ohtani and what he did. He put what Babe Ruth did to shame. Yeah. And he's doing it again this season. It's the same type of thing. You want to Shesterkin right now is the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. of the NHL. He deserves to win everything. He will win his trophy, which is the Vezina. He will not win the Hart because there are too many there's just too much else there that stands in his way. And especially lately with goal scoring being up, I can see the argument for him, but
goal scoring's up. This season is seeing a huge uptick in how many goals are going into the back of the net. He's putting up numbers that are in the eras where
dead puck era.
Dead puck era, and he's putting numbers up that are matching Dominic Hasek, and people are like, nah, come on.
Honestly, I still. Matthews did break 100 points. I missed that one. To me, I think Igor Shesterkin sits 5th, maybe 6th in Hart voting, because it's going to be McDavid, Matthews, and I want to put Gaudreau potentially in that 3rd slot now. And I don't know which way the voters will go, but what a crazy end to the season. I think because McDavid had that dip, that's against him. Because Matthews started so slow, mind you, he was coming in off of surgery, that will go against him. So who knows?
It's going to be Draisaitl.
Yeah, and I honestly think the perfect example as to why Shesterkin will not win the Hart is it's the same argument as Vladdy against Shohei. Yeah, you're having this season that is unreal. Unfortunately, there's just this monster that's doing other things.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's 3 or 4 players that are I never thought we would see another 60 goal scorer, and Matthews is still sitting 2 away from it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's frustrating because he deserves it. No, like in my opinion, no other player on that list except for maybe Gaudreau. But even then, like
he's got a good supporting cast. It's literally but at the same time, yeah, you've got Draisaitl, but for the most part, it is the Connor McDavid show.
Yeah, it should be kind of like how Patrice Bergeron is always winning the Selke. It should always be McDavid because he is going to be the most valuable player because he's playing higher than what he's paid.
Yeah, and it's not by a small margin either. It is by a massive, massive margin. I am very interested to see how the voting is going to go on that. If Shesterkin doesn't win the Vezina, though, that will be the dumbest thing I have seen ever. It's the same thing. Like, I'm sorry, Leaf fans, but Michael Bunting is probably not going to win the Rookie of the Year.
No, because I don't think the coaches are going to see him as a rookie or whoever is the voters.
That doesn't matter because you've got Kirill Kaprizov who's won it, and you also have Artemi Panarin who won it. So the age thing doesn't matter. It's, he had to earn his way up to the first line. Seider is literally playing with a pylon and came in and took over that first line defense spot. And he has almost 50 points as a rookie defenseman.
Yeah.
If that's enough for Cale Makar to win it, that's more than enough. And Cale Makar had supporting staff. Yeah, there is not a lot of support in Detroit. Is going to be scary when the year ends in 5, and by that I mean 2025. Right now, they're building towards it, and Seider's going to be a big part of it. Lucas Raymond, if he kept on that pace, it was his. It has to be Seider.
Yeah, if it's not Seider, again, that one's less of a...
It would be less, but outrage. Yeah.
Like, I still think that the most criminally underrated player on that list of Calder is Jeannot on Nashville. You never hear about this kid, and he's
the best part for him, though. Like he's
playing Gordie Howe hockey.
Every single time I see a highlight of him, he's like, oh, he just beat the crap out of some guy and scored a beautiful goal. Good for you.
Yeah, like he's going to have more Gordie Howe hat-tricks than Gordie Howe did. I think he only had like 2 or 3.
I think Gordie Howe only had 1, didn't he?
Something like that, but like he's going to have more than him potentially by the end of this season.
He's going to have more than him in the playoffs. If there's going to be a player that gets into a fight in the playoffs, it's going to be Tanner Jeannot. Let's be honest.
Oh, well, like Ryan Reeves and everything, but it's just...
there is a 0% chance that Ryan Reeves is allowed to get into a fight into the playoffs because any team in the East that is given a free power play, you're giving up a goal.
Well, I mean, if it's a mutual 5-5, or
he'll probably get the instigator, though he tends to start those. I think from there, though, Pat, we've got to move on.
I know.
The Ice Prep Podcast presents Games of the Week.
So, of course, Pat went the fun route and chose Vegas.
The game I went to.
Vegas and New Jersey. I would like to say when Devils were up 3-1, I stayed up late watching that one. Devils are up 3-1, and Vegas gets that second goal. Holy crap, that was loud. I can't imagine how loud that was in the actual T-Mobile Arena.
It was great. It was like a punch to the chest. It felt so good. The one thing I did notice about that game, it honestly wasn't the most entertaining game to watch, I'm assuming, on TV, because the first period was played in center ice. It was like 80% of the time it was stuck in center ice. There's not a ton of shots on goal. So after the first period, it definitely got better. But first period was boring, but it at least had a highlight reel goal where it made Robin Leonard look real bad.
Yeah, that probably didn't help his case with Peter DeBoer because Boquist just made them look bad, and I live for that. So Pat had that one. Devils get the win. I went with the first round matchup, and they're fighting for home ice right now. The Blues with the 6-5 overtime win. They're actually tied in points at this time, the advantage does go to Minnesota because they do have more actual wins. They've got the higher points percentage, but obviously there's a different regulation wins. But what a crazy game. That series, I think I will be staying up to watch all of those. Even though Vegas probably has the best, or not Vegas, Minnesota probably has the best tandem in hockey right now, I don't think they can beat the Blues in a 7-game series.
As long as Ville Husso stays healthy, they can't rely on
If Husso
Binnington.
goes down and Binnington has to start, then whoever's playing against Binnington's getting the win.
Yeah, maybe at that point he'll look nervous.
Do I look nervous? That's a good callback.
Right?
Honestly, though, that game was crazy, and I can't wait for that series. And I know that you're thinking that the Avs won't make it out of the first round, but you're also looking at that series going, just play each other for 7 games and brutalize each other.
Yeah, like if the Avs do make it out, I just want the teams to be 50% of what they actually are. You'll be seeing these rookies. It's just like his first game ever. He's been in the AHL for
He's been called up from
years.
the ECHL on a emergency basis.
Yeah.
So going to this week, do you want to? I know you have a ton picked.
I have a bunch picked in case we matched so that we would have different ones.
All right.
Yeah.
I am going with a game on Tuesday night.
Okay.
So Pat can go to his other list. We talked about these two teams earlier. I think you know exactly which game I'm looking at. I don't know. That is the Carolina Hurricanes at Madison Square Garden. And this could be the game that determines the Metro. There is a very likely chance because that can be potentially a 4-point swing. And it's one of those weird situations where both teams are guaranteed home ice in the first round. The winner of the Metro either gets Washington or Pittsburgh. The loser most likely ends up facing... let me rethink this one. Ends up facing, Tampa or Boston. So if you win the Metro, your prize is either Tampa Bay or Boston. If you lose first place in the Metro, you end up second. You still have home ice. You're playing either the struggling Penguins. I mean, who wants to face Crosby in the playoffs? Nobody. Or Washington, they've stumbled at times, but they're starting to get things going. This is one of those weird times where I think you want to be second in the Metro, but those teams do not want to lose. So it will be interesting. It's a potential second round preview, a very likely second round preview. So I think that is going to be, and two best goalies in the league right now facing off just before the playoffs, and the game's going to matter. So it's either going to be like a very low scoring game or both goalies are going to get just plastered and they're going to get pulled immediately.
Yeah, it's going to be... Oh, my God.
Bless you.
I'm so sorry. I have allergies. And I didn't take my medication today.
I'm glad Pat aimed away from the camera so that it suddenly didn't have, specks all over it.
Yeah, gross.
Was that one of the ones that you were looking at, by the way, before?
It was, and it's one of the reasons I said just before we started recording this, Tuesday is a hell of a day for matchups, because it really is. You have Carolina and New York at 7 o'clock. Then you also have Vegas and Dallas. They're at 8:30, and depending on how the games shake out, that could be an incredibly, incredibly important game. Then you also have St. Louis and Colorado, which, like you said, that could be a second round preview as well. They could be going toe to toe, and that's always a really gritty game, and it is a very anxious game for me because somehow they kind of run into each other a lot and hurt each other a lot.
Not only that, there's more. Okay.
Yeah. The game I'm going with is Saturday night.
Okay, I thought you were going to stick with that one because you've also got the Flames and Preds. That could be a first round matchup. And you've got the Canucks, who no matter what happens have to beat Seattle.
Yep.
So
but the
Saturday.
game that I am interested in, because I think this will be a very unique one, because it's two teams that are missing potentially two key players on their team, and what the playoffs could actually look like when they lose key players from their team. And that is Florida versus Toronto.
Ooh, I was looking at that.
I am choosing the Toronto Maple Leafs as my game of the week, and that is just simply because the last game they played them, they had that amazing comeback in the third period where Florida came back and won it against Toronto. Was it 6-1? Was it 5-1? Who knows? It was
5-1, ended up 7-6 in OT, and I only know that because the Devils were up 6-1 against them and then lost 7-6 in overtime, and that was the game before.
Exactly. You've got Florida that is coming in just so hot. You've got the Leafs that are doing things incredible and doing a lot of line switching around. I haven't been watching Florida too much when it comes to line switching, and they might be doing the same, but Matthews could be out. Ekblad could be out. So you've got these two key players on their team. Probably Matthews a little bit less, and I'm not trying to shade him, but they've shown that they can play without Matthews on there. So it'll be really interesting to see how they play without a key player versus a team that's also missing a key player. And this could be a very, very important game for the Leafs to show that, yes, they can do it if they make it to the second round and they have to face off against Florida.
See, and
that's how it will shake out.
Yeah, what's fun with this one, too, is that here's our favorite line. We're recording this on Thursday, so tonight, for us, the Leafs play Tampa Bay. So once again, they don't have the back-to-back. They've got a day off in between. They've got Tampa before they play Florida. The very next night on Sunday, they play against Washington. So you want to talk about not only tune-up games for the playoffs, but getting yourselves playoff ready. That game might end up being one of the first times on a Saturday night where we see things not get fully insane. Mm-hmm. But it's the Leafs on Saturday night, so I'm also expecting like 15 goals in this game.
Yeah, it's going to be yet another coin flip between those two teams, and I kind of love it. And last game, they showed, regardless of any sort of playoff implications whatsoever, last time they met, they showed that their games can be crazy. So I'm really excited to see this rematch because, yeah, it could be crazy again.
Well, and it showed that the Leafs can get a lead against, and a big lead against, one of the best teams. They just had the defensive collapse, the shorthanded goal, and then Florida thrives on chaos, and Florida shows that if they're allowed to have things get chaotic, they can come back from any deficit. Unfortunately for Florida, their circumstance is a lot less likely in the playoffs. Of the way the two teams played last time, the Leafs played a better playoff-style game, but that doesn't mean it will go forward. I think Florida beats them again in this one.
Well, because
I think the Leafs have to play the comeback kids in this one, and they're still going to end up losing.
The way that I look at it, though, is you talk about how Florida, chaos, and, they were able to use it to their advantage. Well, how come chaos follows them? It doesn't follow them. They make it. They create it. They know how to create the chaos.
Oh, of course
and
they
use
do.
it to their advantage. So
the reason why I bring that up, though, is the refs don't allow that type of chaos in the playoffs. And we've seen that in the past. It's how teams like Tampa Bay get away with literally murdering people, and how Shea Weber made a career out of that in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying that in the playoffs, as much as the chaos may not be something that is usually good, that means they can dial it up. They can go bigger with the chaos. They can do crazier things. They can let Sam Bennett off the leash.
And
he can take out all the knees.
You want to talk about like Blake Coleman being the crazy guy for Tampa. Sam Bennett's got the Nazem Kadri crazy eyes, but he just doesn't get called for when he goes crazy as much.
No, so that one could be a very interesting matchup. It could be something that we see when the Leafs, maybe make it to the second round, if that's the case. It could be an interesting one. I
would like to point out, we stuck with the East, and we stuck with the top two teams in each division for our games of the week.
Well,
I mean, I honestly can't wait for the playoffs this year. Even I was talking with my father-in-law earlier today. I have not, in the time that I've known him, I have not seen or heard him excited for series that weren't Toronto, and he's excited for other series. So I cannot wait And for me, it'll be great because I'll have 2 new university courses that I'm starting, so I'm up late anyway. Hockey on in the background.
There you go. You get to watch Colorado implode upon itself.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. Pat is trying the whole reverse psychology. If I put the bad juju out in the universe, good will come back to me.
No, what I'm doing is I'm setting my own expectations to the fact that they're going to lose. So if they don't lose, then I'm excited. And if they do lose, I'm less hurt. Because last year I was off for a week. Not off of work, but just like emotionally. So
I remember that.
I had to go mini golfing afterwards.
I remember when Colorado lost that first game against Vegas after they went up. You were like, I'm not watching this anymore. Colorado's done. I can't do this to myself.
And then they lost. Was I wrong? No, it was the Dallas game. It was the Dallas series.
It's because Pat stops watching that they lose. We've just confirmed it.
No, it's because I stopped drinking out of my 22-year-old coffee mug. That's the Colorado Avalanche. That is my good luck charm. I didn't drink out of it yesterday, and they lost to Seattle. So clearly,
what's gonna happen if that thing ever breaks?
Oh, I would glue it back together. It would be this hodge. It would just. There's no way. Or I just like eat glass out of it. I don't know. I find a way to make it to utilize it. Like no. It's self-preservation for my own sanity and for my wife's sanity. So
poor Zoe.
Yes.
Well, I think there's no better place to wrap it up than with Pat's hockey superstitions. I haven't had any for years because the Devils have just sucked.
You just gotta find a good one. That's what it is.
Yeah,
I know you
wanted
one that works.
I know you wanted to talk a tiny bit of Raptors, but we rambled a long time about awards again. We seem to get stuck up on that a little bit. So I'm glad you had fun in Vegas. It just from hearing from you, it seemed like it was a blast. I know that it's one of those things for the future traveling if Kylie and I get to. Like, we know if it's during the summer, we are going to see a baseball game. If it's during hockey season, it's like, I want to go see a hockey game. So I'm glad you got to enjoy that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I mentioned earlier, if you do get a chance to go to Vegas for anything, and it just so happens to be in hockey season, look for tickets. The resellers, as much as I hate them, the day of, I was able to find tickets for dirt cheap that were 10 rows back from the glass. So keep an eye, go to a game, enjoy it. It is an experience like I've never had before. So yeah. Love it.